Hi, friends. Hello, the world. This is me, Asel, with Complaint-Free.life podcast. And as I said last time, I've started this new project of inviting very exciting people to my podcast to be guests and to just have a conversation around different topics. Today, I invited a special guest, Helmut. Thank you so much for being here. And I proposed to him the topic of complaining because simply my topic usually around and evolves around the topic of complaining and how we can reduce or remove it so that we can create the lives that we want. And Helmut, maybe I let you introduce yourself and then we continue from there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Asel, and happy to be with you and all the listeners and those who are watching. Um, so I have been in the international humanitarian environment for the over the last 30 years. I'm originally from northern Germany, and I'm saying northern Germany because that is a space where the perception is always people are more kind of dry, don't
Ah,
talk a lot, and are more reserved.
okay.
And so that's basically where I'm coming from. So also the whole question about engaging with emotions, looking into myself, and so it's really been a journey. So I am a lawyer by education, and then joined the UNHCR relatively early in my career, and that has brought me to different continents and different functions. And what I enjoyed about all of this journey is that I worked also in different functions. So the legal field
Mm,
went over more to conflict management. I
yeah.
worked as an ombudsman for many years, also for the ICRC and for the UN. And then now I'm heading the ethics office in UNHCR.
Mhm.
And I very much see the connections, between the legal field and then the conflict management, the managerial and leadership roles that I've had. And so this is where I am at the moment. And perhaps I should add that in this journey, I have also over the last kind of 5, 10 years done a lot more with coaching. I have seen the value of coaching.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm sure we have an opportunity to talk about that. Apart from that, I'm
Yes.
married and I have 2 adult daughters, and I live in Geneva, Switzerland.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this introduction. So, just to give you a little bit of disclaimer to all listeners, is that whatever we're going to talk today with Helmut is going to be from human to human. It will not represent the organization that he's working for. And the other thing that I want to also disclaimer about is that the complaining that we're going to talk about is not the formal complaint that people make in order to defend their rights. It's going to be more about those chatters that happen in our brains that we keep having over and over about something, yet we don't really do anything about it. And we spend a lot of brain energy and time, which on the end does not bring any results. So, having said that, let's start with the first question. So, basically, the way that we want to do this podcast is we want to talk about what complaining is, what's the impact of it, and how coaching can help people to reduce it or remove it if they would like to. But first, I would like to ask a personal question, Helmut. Do you complain?
Hmm. I think it would surprise me if the answer would be no. There are lots of things that I complain about in the
Oh, okay.
world, about myself, about my immediate environment. So I'm certainly part of those who also complain.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we would just say that, complaining is a human nature. We do that sometimes to socialize with people, right? That we complain about governments or we complain about world injustice. We complain about certain things. And then there are also certain complaints that just keep nagging us. And this is probably more likely about things that are in our own personal growth that maybe our brains are offering us brainstorming ideas of what we could be doing, yet we don't really follow up on them. But we keep complaining that things are not moving or not good. So, how would you define for yourself what complaint is in your words?
Yeah, I think one of the things that cross my mind when I'm reflecting about complaining is from who are you as a person?
Yeah.
And if uh, people are describing me as optimist, positive, somewhat always the glass half full. And of course, the beauty of a diverse working environment, also with many colleagues from different parts of the world, different countries, is we are not all seeing the glass half full. And there are many who see the glass half empty. So I think it's already also important to see, from where are we coming? What when we look through our glasses in a way, what kind of glasses do we have on, and what are we focusing on?
Mm-hmm.
So if I talk about complaining, then I need to qualify that because it is coming from a position of glass half full, solution oriented, trying to see how can I deal with that, or how can we deal with that. So to give you an illustration about complaining, I mean, it is ranging from, for example, I'm complaining about myself that I'm not playing more the piano. I always want to play more the piano, and
Mm-hmm.
I really have this struggle with myself. I complain about a world that is increasingly getting polarized, and where differences of views cannot be held anymore in a
Yeah.
room. I'm complaining about an environment where people don't listen anymore. So
Mm.
you have, I'm complaining yesterday about my inability to throw things away.
Mm.
I don't want to throw things away. I
Yeah.
am complaining. So one thing is complaining about myself, certain things that I would like to do, and I don't feel that I do this enough.
Yeah.
Try to find out what are the reasons. And then also complaining about others. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this approach that is important for me is always to first try to see what has this to do with myself. We tend to complain about others. It is always a
Yes.
finger pointing thing. It's the fault of somebody else. And also in my professional practice here in teams in the United Nations, we have really tried to develop a practice, almost kind of a gym fitness room of
Mm.
stop, pause, reflect, and see what has all of this to do with myself, and how am I part of a problem possibly, or contributing to a problem, and how can I contribute to a solution.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point because I think what I'm observing with my circle is that complaining, when people complain, they think that it's happening to them. It's not like something that they're generating themselves with their own thoughts. And this is fascinating for me, so that as soon as we realize that the actual complaining is coming from a feeling which we probably describe as negative, like frustration, disappointment, right? So, and those are the feelings that are moving us to complain about something, then definitely we need to look at where is that feeling come from? Meaning, why are we feeling that way? And I think we often forget to ask that. So therefore, I'm happy that you are pointing at this. What is our individual responsibility to look at what is the thought behind it, or belief even? Because
Yeah.
we often have these beliefs that there are certain expectations and people should behave according to those expectations. And as soon as they don't, then things fall apart.
Yeah, it is interesting. When I listen to you, it reminds me on our experience in conflict management.
Mm,
Many people say conflict is bad. Most of us are
yes.
avoidance, and I have seen the opportunity of conflict, the
Mm-hmm.
positive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what can conflict generate? If we don't have conflict, we don't create something new. Now, of course, it has to be managed, and that is where the whole problem is. In conflict management, we observe that often the issue is about I don't like Tom, Peter, Helmut. So rather than looking down in the iceberg and under the water,
Yeah.
and see what is really happening here, and that is partly of this inquiry, kind of this journey of inquiry, to try to see, okay, what is happening here with me? What are my triggers? What is the reason that I feel triggered?
Yes.
Things like that.
Absolutely. So the way that in the coaching world we say is that you really need to dump all of your thoughts onto a piece of paper and do a thought download. And in the thought download, you can just write all the things that are bothering you that you think you're complaining about. And like you said about Trump or whoever, and then ask those questions and reflect about it, right? And then decide whether your expectations are really someone else's problem or it's actually yours in terms of what you can do about it. And the other thing that I like about this exercise is we really look into what are the facts and what are the stories around the facts. And I think this is what I heard from your interview with James on creating a culture of ethical leadership, right? And where you're talking about, how we can really look at the facts and the context first, which we call in the coaching world circumstance. What's the circumstance that we can all agree on that happened? And then what were our thoughts about those, which then generated our feelings of frustration and then disappointment. And then we started complaining. Yes, absolutely. That sounds great. The other thing I was going to ask is that so we complain and we often forget to reflect on about ourselves and what's happening within ourselves. So, what would you say the impact of these complaining on us as individuals when we do that continuously? How is your observation?
What I'm observing is that there's a lot of loss of energy. It is
Mm,
almost kind of, the air is going out and
yeah,
the energy is going out, and everything that makes us as, creative and inspired and engaged human beings is kind of drained out of
right.
us. So that is what I am observing. And of course, I don't want to make a judgment on this because
Yeah,
we are all in different conditions, and
yes.
we need to meet people at the place where they are. And
Mm-hmm.
now
Yeah.
there are choices that also
Yes.
those people have, but it's very difficult to get someone into this on this path, opening the door of a specific, more kind of engaging, constructive choice, if the whole body is concerned with something else, aching, is
Yes.
people are not well, and often because these things are not addressed in a timely manner, then it has escalated and it has already resulted in, yeah, not only mental health problems, but
Mm-hmm.
giving up, burnout,
Yes.
and a lack of belief of those people to see this opportunity that there
Mm.
are, and that, I very deeply believe in the ability of everybody bringing their own toolkit of skills and
Yes.
humanity to be the architect of where they are planning to go. And I think that is important. This is also important in management and leadership, to get into a more people-oriented coaching leadership style, to re-energize people, and that is of course connected to the energy that you yourself are spreading
Yeah.
as a colleague or a leader or manager, and the true interest in that other person. Often these people who are struggling have never been listened to. They feel that their voice is not heard. They feel that
Mm-hmm.
they don't make a difference anymore. And
Yes.
to rediscover that, I often compare it to a treasure box where there's a lot of dust on, and you need to get the dust off and then to look at those treasures again that everybody brings.
Yes, absolutely. But you see, the that's absolutely the one side, and the other side I feel is also there is this energy sometimes that maybe we might be discussing too much, or maybe we're consulting too much. Maybe we shouldn't be really, listening to everyone because then it takes a lot of time and it's not efficient, and there is this other element of it, right? So how do we get the culture? I mean, in our personal lives, but also in organizations, I guess, is to find that balance of getting really like getting people the feeling of they are being heard, as you're saying. Is it, would you say, a personal responsibility that if I have something, I want to say it or I want to process things on time, or just simply waiting for being heard, and if not, then getting frustrated and disappointed?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important question that you're raising. I mean, we live in a world, like we all know, it's getting faster.
Yeah.
It is less time. You know, when I started in this space to work there, we were almost taken by the hand by a mentor, almost like an apprenticeship, slowly,
Mm,
learning. Now everything is fast, so we don't have this induction anymore. We don't have this help, and so people. But I think, see, we cannot place all the responsibilities on the individual
mm,
colleague, because there is a duty of care also of the organization, and there are values, and that an organization is claiming to live.
mm,
And one of those values is inclusion and diversity, and that means um, what does inclusion mean if you leave certain people out, or if you don't invite
yeah,
their views? We
yeah,
live in a world where we need everyone to help us to develop creative solutions.
mm,
So, in an organization like in UNHCR, where we have 18,000 colleagues,
yeah,
we need their engagement. We need to invite them to the table. Otherwise, we are losing out. And
mm,
that, I think, is a notion that is increasingly, that is more and more understood. And still, this fear of speaking up, contractual job security, all of those
mm,
things lead to a space where we don't tap that energy. So I just want to be clear: this is not just a responsibility of an individual employee or so. It
mm,
is an organization that is responsible to create a space
mm,
which is inclusive, and
yeah.
where there is also a culture of dialogue.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that watching your interview that I mentioned, where you said that um, when we're reflecting about our own behavior, we could also be reflect about what space we are creating for discussions to happen, right? Are we really saying that, okay, as long as I manage my own mind, as long as I'm fine, then everything else is I don't care, but rather how can we create an environment where how I'm treating myself, basically, meaning I'm processing everything, all my emotions, but also I'm creating that space for others to be able to tell me honestly and openly how the discussions are going, how the relationships are going, and that will then lead to honest discussions with each other where we can maybe correct things or make things better for each other, right? So that's why I just wanted to highlight that. And then reflecting on that, so when we know the impact of this, right, on the long term, and we know that eventually all of this complaining together with all the other life circumstances may lead to severe consequences. I love the way you said that we really need to work on it and process it on time and clean up. I use the word clean up our, so have a hygiene in our own brains, basically, right? And remove things that don't serve us anymore. And that could also lead to stop unnecessarily suffering. And I might be speaking a lot about my coaching world, but anyway, so the idea is that how can we really look at what's happening in our minds or in our bodies in terms of feelings, and what are they doing to us, and because they are really giving us signals as to what's not right around us. And once we know, then catch the signals and do something about it on time rather than keep just rinse and repeat or recycle the same thoughts, then eventually it may create problems. So now that we know all of that, and at least Logically, we know this, if not practically, for some of us. So, how would you say in your practice you try to do that? How do you deal with it, or what are the efficient ways that you've dealt with it?
Okay, there are different tools or ways of addressing that. One is, of course, again, the energy that I create around myself. So, of course, I expect myself to be attentive
Mhm.
to what is happening around me, and also, you know, being attentive. For example, listening. We always talk about active listening.
Yeah.
It means really listening with our mind, with our eyes, with our ears, and with our heart, and with our body, and
Mm.
to connect at all these levels. And so it is, um, I once, when I started to practice mindfulness, started,
Mm.
10, 15 years ago with that, somebody told me, you cannot read and learn everything around this around only reading,
Mm.
and there's interesting research also about meditation and mindfulness, on how
Right.
helpful it is, and all of that I think is good for people who like to look at that. It's just, what I want to say is, you need to practice, and you need,
Yes.
these are, it's like muscle training. We don't want to be going to the Olympics, at least not me. So I don't want to be absolute the best pro, and some.
Yeah.
It is just to see which muscle would I like, small, step by step, to work on. And I think here, I have a lot of colleagues who come and say, my emotions, I leave them at home, because
Mm.
here at work I want to be professional.
Mm.
So that is something that has accompanied me. I mean, this kind of listening to these kinds of views for a long time already, and it's still
Mm.
today. Some people also say, I don't want to go feel like that I'm going to the psychologist.
Mm.
And so there is a lot of, I wouldn't say resistance, but questions that people are
Mm.
asking themselves. And I think slowly, uh, that is something that I really feel, the way how we are engaging in dialogue, the nature of conversation, increased vulnerability that is also shown by
Yeah.
leaders in the organization. That is a new phenomenon that I didn't see kind of 10 years ago. So
Mm.
I think it is an environment where this is more allowed. Many colleagues still work in their areas on this. They do meditation and they don't talk about it. They consider it private. And
Mm.
I say, I salute them for that, and I also invite them to talk more about it. So I think this is something that doesn't come easy. Often it's a burning
Mm.
platform that triggers it. People get sick,
Mm.
burnout, or like me, in 2010, I started in New York working as an ombudsman, and one morning I had really pain in the heart area. I got very concerned. I went to the hospital, spent a day there. Later, it was a muscle thing, so it was
Mm.
okay. But it showed me I need to do something. And
Mm.
since that moment, I started to do yoga, meditation, and this was just my way of dealing with that.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure I don't think that you just discover this from one day to another, and then you say, I want to practice more my feelings. So it's a journey.
Yes.
Um, and another example recently, I am not very good with showing emotions myself, and
Mm.
so in order to discover that more, I decided to go together with my wife to go into a clown school. So I
Mm.
have started to do clown training,
Mm.
uh, to challenge me to see how can I better access my emotions, the intuition, and just going in
Mm.
there for somebody who normally is really very much in his head. So I'm describing this to say, one, I'm still very much on this journey myself. Plus, we need to help each other. to
Yes.
encourage each other to see the value of accessing that space. And it is not only for the work, of course, it is life learning,
Yeah.
and to orient us in a that we feel in a better space in general in life.
Yes, absolutely. So for me, the most helpful, obviously, as a life coach, I've coached myself and I coach other people. And in this journey, one of the things that I definitely recommend is that, as you were saying about feelings, how can we know what's happening in our bodies, because they're the ones who are very prominent and they tell us what's going on within us, right? So they are a bit like indicators or lighters that tell us something is up or not, and then trace from there. So once we know what the feeling is, then trace from there what's happening in our brain. So not other way around. Usually we do it other way around, like theoretically think about what might be wrong, but rather starting from our heart and body and then go to the mind and then find out the answers. But as you said, this is so much of a practice. And I think the other big piece of it is that we are, many of us are so afraid of certain emotions and we think that we shouldn't be feeling them, and we tend to avoid or resist them, or simply like we come from cultures like mine where it's, important to be always polite and never really express what's happening inside you because it's not appropriate or whatever the case may be. So there are a lot of cultural aspects about it as well. But when it comes to processing emotions and feelings, obviously it's a private thing as well. So you can decide for yourself how best you learn and get to know yourself by catching those feelings and really understanding what they're trying to say. And when it comes to complaining, the other thing that really helps me is that whatever the complaining is, I really write them down, and then so everything that's going around that, and then deciding which of them I can really change and which of them I cannot. Because oftentimes my brain really thinks that, oh, this person should behave in a particular way, and if they don't, then I'm going to be upset, right? So obviously it comes back to me, and then I'm used to thinking in a particular way and having this expectation. And as soon as that expectation is not met, then I get upset, right? So how can we really learn, as you said, in terms of inclusion and diversity? How can we really respect our own views, but also respect of others? Because as soon as we are expecting of others something and they don't meet, then we're really excluding them. We're saying that you are not this person that I'm expecting, therefore I don't talk to you, or something else, right? So that's why let's have a look at those, uh, what we can control and what we cannot, what we can expect and what we cannot, and really look at how those impacts and how we can reduce that impact of complaining on our lives, and not to let it to burnout or other consequences that we will be in the end suffering. And you know it's up to us how we want to choose to live that life, and also demand it from other people, but knowing what the tools are, knowing what the rules are. Yeah. So I don't know if, yes.
If you allow me just to underscore what you just said about this circle of control, this is really, 20 years ago, I did an MBA, and in UNHCR, we were also in a space where we looked at some management models. And so I still remember we had a mouse pad. And on that one, it was these circles where it says in the middle, circle of control and then circle of influence. And I
Mm,
think it is still one of those 10 models that I would always lift up and say, this is something we need to constantly reflect on, because when you do this listing that you are describing quite rightly, and then you prioritize and look at what is in your circle of control, that is
yes.
really the one. And that's a choice. Then you can always look at the other things that are far out in what you can perhaps not influence anymore, outside of your influence.
Yes.
And you can struggle and struggle and struggle and can get all upset, no change. So the
Exactly.
question is, how do you want to use your energies? It's a choice.
Yes,
Where do you want to
exactly.
focus your energy? Mhm.
Exactly. Absolutely. So one of the things that I find that, I mean, of course, we have this meditation and yoga and many other possibilities that are happening. And now I think life coaching is trying to introduce this mind hygiene, basically, or mind management, where you really try to uh, do a mind exercise, right? So another word maybe is reflection, but whenever we say reflection, maybe it sounds more like, oh, only people who have a lot of time to do this, kind of a stereotype. So that's why we're trying to find new ways to introduce the same concept, basically, of how we can do a mind exercise the way that we do a body exercise that we go to gym, right? So and from that perspective, when we are doing that, obviously you could really do this mind exercise yourself, or you coach yourself, whichever term you want to use. The important part is that you pay attention to what's coming up within your mind, within your body, and how you can process or um, clean up or use it in a way that serves you best. Or you can also use a life coach or coach to go to. Now, a few words about coaching. I know that we've spoken about it, and I know that we are both very proponents of it. So, Helmut, do you have a coach, or if you were to choose one, what would you pay attention to?
I started to work with a coach about 5 years ago. So I took a decision because I felt I wanted to explore a few things about myself. And I was also in a professional transition, which I knew would come. And so I thought, who is this new Helmut in this new
Mm,
organization where I worked before, but where I'm coming back now 10 years later with additional kind of, with some changes.
yes.
So I find it not very easy to go about selecting the right coach.
Mm,
Now, this is, I think, a question of chemistry, and
mm,
you don't necessarily find this so easily, by looking at names. So it may be
yes.
that one has to test out. But I can only tell you, when I met my coach at the time, first half hour, or even first 10 minutes or so, I thought, will never work out. That will never
Mm,
work out. The woman, and I mean, it became very clear that this is exactly what I needed.
mm,
And also because I wanted to have a challenge. And often in coaching, I mean, of course, a coach is asking for permission to challenge. It's just, when you invest in that time and money, you also, at least me, I wanted to make the best out of it.
yes.
So then now in the coaching journey, I felt, okay, so I was a coachee, and then thought, hey, at my professional work, I do a lot of coaching,
Mhm,
and then felt it's too intuitive. I wanted to do it more intentionally. I wanted to know which tool can I use when,
mm,
and not just say, okay, let me test out this or this, and that brought me then myself into coaching training and coaching certification.
mhm,
5, 10 years ago, coaching was considered as a space where you move people who cause problems. So today, this is completely different.
yes.
Today, it is, and I live it here also in the United Nations, where we are focusing much more on the opportunity of coaching, not only individual coaching, also team coaching,
Mm,
as a almost thinking partner, as I wouldn't say sparring partner, more of con, someone who believes in the coachee and who believes in the potential and
yes.
who's just there to accompany. And so that is an immense opportunity. And sometimes when people tell me, yeah, but it's too expensive, I don't pay for it, or
Mm,
I don't want to pay for it. Okay, there's a whole range of fees. My argument is always, at least here in Switzerland, uh, a good dinner in a restaurant has also a high cost. Or when I have a wellness place where I go, a hotel, that is also coming cost. So I see it a little bit like a wellness, a gym, a fitness, an exploration,
Yes.
and that is a fascinating space, and both for the coachee and for the coach. And I am glad to see that at least the organizations I'm connected to want to develop that capacity more and more in offering managers and leaders and also others
Mhm.
to connect more with all their resources.
Yes, absolutely. I love your arguments and also the way you are saying why coach is important. I think some of the reasons why I pay my coach a lot of fees is because of the reason of having someone believing in my potential more than I can currently, right? And that's an amazing ability or amazing space that we can have. And the other one, I think, is that the other person mirroring my thoughts from a side. And this is, I think, something very powerful that coaches can do is that we often ourselves may not really get our patterns of thinking detected because we are so in it, and it's difficult to determine those patterns. But if someone outside looking at it, they have the ability to show you immediately, and you're like, huh, this is what I've been thinking all my life and I never knew it. So
This is exactly what I observe when, I mean, I'm also asking them for feedback, and many of the clients say, you know, this is something I never thought about. And I thought the problem is here, and now I want to look more there. So that's an interesting question. Let me think about this. Um, Coaching is also very much helping to get into concrete action. So to
yes.
almost kind of do some field assignments
Yeah.
between the coaching sessions. And I think I get that feedback from many who say, I want to be clear about what action I can take. So
Yes.
that's also something. And overall, a better connection to your own personal values and purpose in life, which is not something that we, I think, sufficiently reflect on, and make it an
Yes.
energy that drives us and makes us more confident in moving on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a great description is that this is a space where it's time about us and really looking at individually what's inside me and get that treasure out and get the dust off and then see what's inside the treasure box, right? So I'm also calling it inner wisdom that we can get it out and then say, okay, what's my inner wisdom telling me and how I can go around in the world and designing my life. And it's oftentimes we are so prone to looking outside for answers when we have so much answers within us, and coaching could be that time specifically dedicated to looking for answers within, and coach could help find those answers. So yes, so
Absolutely,
amazing.
absolutely.
Helmut, any last words before we wrap up today?
Well, I think I can only thank you for this opportunity of having had this conversation, and hopefully that also the listeners and those who are viewing us develop curiosity, or if they have already had a little bit the appetizer of coaching, to pursue it. I think it is really a fantastic opportunity to grow and to also spread energy around. And everybody is doing that in a different way, a different pace. It's a journey of inquiry, it's an exploration, and
Yes.
it is almost kind of in the times of the pandemic, we don't travel a lot. So why not spend a little bit more travel inside ourselves with the safety net of a coach and someone who makes sure that
Yes.
we are accompanied in this process.
Absolutely. So I was gonna say, using your words in terms of traveling, we have in the coaching world how we can travel to our future selves and then see ourselves in several years into the future, and who will we become if we go at this pace, or what's the potential of becoming another or maybe a different version of us if we like, and then looking at our current self and say, okay, our future self has these things or this personality, and that's who I can become, and that's what I work towards it, right? So that's an amazing way of traveling to the future and finding out what your future self is and then go towards it.
Mhm.
So that's wonderful. So thank you so much, Helmut. It was absolute pleasure to talk to you, and yeah, have just brag about coaching, and
Thank
I
you.
hope that we can do it more often.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Asel. Thank you
listeners.
for having given me this opportunity. Thank you.
Pleasure. So thank you so much, and enjoy the recording. And sorry about the certain noises in the background, but I hope it will not disturb your listening enjoyment. Bye bye.